broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, and welcome to day 2 of the 3rd Annual Better Business Summit. Again, I'm Paulette Scarpetti, BBB President. This year's Better Business Summit was created with a focus on bringing a passion to your business and urgency to do more than survive, but to thrive. Today, we will be hearing from Cindi Bigelow, the 3rd generation president and CEO of a family-owned business, Bigelow Tea, which produces over 2 billion tea bags annually. As a Connecticut resident, we should all be proud to say Bigelow is a homegrown Connecticut company headquartered right here in Fairfield. It actually dates back to 1945 when Cindi's grandmother founded the company that has now grown into a market leader of specialty teas. With a focus on sustainability, Cindi champions sustainable practices throughout the company, with Bigelow becoming a certified B corporation in 2019. And this year, Bigelow earned the designation of a Green E certified company, using 100% renewable energy at its manufacturing locations, with an emphasis on recycling and composting. Ultimately, as a socially and community-minded company, Cindi frequently makes appearances speaking to students and industry leaders, sharing insights on business ethics, leadership, and marketing. And today, we are fortunate to have her join the BBB 2020 Business Summit in a fireside chat with our presenting sponsor, Bob Ruffalo. Bob is the founder and CEO of Impact, an agency he formed over 11 years ago to help people find success with inbound marketing and education, events, and agency services. At this time, I will turn the program over to Bob.
There we go. Thank you, Paulette. Appreciate it. And I am very, very excited for our chat today. I've been looking forward to this for a while. Here with Cindi Bigelow, and Cindi, feel free to go ahead and turn your camera and your microphone back on. Obviously we've all known of Bigelow Tea for a long time. I think Cindi, the first time I actually was aware of Bigelow Tea, I'm a huge Yankee fan. So you guys do a lot of stuff with the Yes Network and Joe Torre. So maybe we can start right there for us Yankee fans. Like, how did you guys get connected with Joe Torre?
That's actually a great story. First of all, thank you guys for even asking me to come and chat with everybody. That's very exciting for me and very fun to share a little bit about our story. And we do have a fun story with Joe Torre. And how it went was my Vice President of Sales and Marketing at the time, Bob Kelly, was reading the New York Times and how Joe Torre had prostate cancer and was a big tea drinker. And we reached out to him and he said, the tea I drink is Bigelow Tea. And we said, wow, what a natural partnership. And so we started working with him back then. And it's been perfect ever since. He's the greatest partner. He's very genuine. He loves Bigelow Tea. That's all he drinks. So it couldn't have been a better union.
That's a cool little lesson. It's just, just reaching out to somebody and just building a relationship. That's great. So
it's a real, he's the real deal. He's really great to work with. He really is different. Not just the name. You're working with a person, which is what we like to do.
That's great. Well, when the BBB asked me to do this, I was like, it'd be great to interview, and instead of doing a fireside chat, we should do a tea chat. And you guys were very gracious to send me this beautiful mug, and I'm drinking.
My mug here of my tea. I'm double fisted. I have a little coffee to start my day. I've got my cup of tea as well, so I'm all ready for you.
That's great. So I'm drinking Constant Comment. So this is your grandmother's original recipe.
Yes, it is.
So
exactly I have here as well that I'm drinking. I love it. It's so unique. And actually, my family is the only one that still makes that. Believe it or not, Bob, my parents in their 90s are the only ones that still make the recipe and what we call the mix that goes into making Constant Comment.
Well, I hope they're not the only ones that had the recipe.
They're not the only ones that have the recipe, they're the only ones that make it. And if they can't, I'm their backup.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
True story.
What
Every
does
company.
constant comment mean?
That's another great question. When my grandmother started it, the company, she found this old colonial recipe and she worked with it for a long time to create this product. And so she sent it to a group of ladies because she originally was an interior designer. And the ladies got the tea, they drank it, they enjoyed it so much, and they said that night it was a source of constant comment. And that is how it got its name, Constant Comment. And when we first started working with ad agencies, they were like, you got to get rid of that name. That name doesn't mean anything. And my family was like, no, it means that people are really talking about it. And no one's heard of a tea like this, so we want to keep the name, and we kept the name. And it's still one of the top 5 selling specialty teas in the United States of America.
That's
Pretty
incredible.
cool.
That's great. Well, we've touched on this already a little bit. So, company was founded by your grandparents and obviously your grandmother's recipe, ran your website. Your grandfather was running the business. Maybe you can kind of walk us through a little bit of the history.
Yep. That was, I mean, she started it. She created it. He was in the finance area of it. She did, from being an interior designer when she lost everything in the Depression, she wanted to start another business. She was an entrepreneur, no question. And she wanted a business for her whole family so that her one son, my father, David, could work with her as well. And so she started on this very difficult journey that nobody even heard of specialty tea. And she just pioneered the specialty tea industry. She never gave up on it when things were really tough. She would get in her station wagon and drive to any store that was even selling it to find out why it was even selling. She really, by sheer grit, Bob, that company survived the years that it did. And then my father and mother took over, and they were the one who really expanded it into all the different types of teas. They were the one that put it into foil to protect the product. And it's just a beautiful family business, 3rd generation. We have no outside money, no outside owners, 100% family. And we consider our shareholders to be our 400 employees. They're the ones that we ensure we take care of every day.
So your grandparents. What did the company look like when they passed it down to your parents? Like what did the company look like? How big was it? What were some of the biggest accomplishments at that point?
So small, and it was very early on. My grandmother actually had gotten cancer, and so she was my father had really pretty much, he had worked there for many years in and out, but then he also had kind of done his own thing for a while. He got into photography and filmmaking. And then she called him back in 1959, 58, and said, I need you back here. And so she made him president, and he ran it from 59. She passed away in 66. So it was a very small business when he took over. I remember it was maybe around in the mid 70s that it started to really kind of feel a little more, I was very young at the time, but it started, excuse me, kind of have a little more finality to the fact we were going to actually be a business, starting somewhere in the 70s. And then 80s, we really started to become a business. And then today, as the introduction, thank you, Paulette, for that great introduction, 2 billion tea bags, over 200 million, #1 specialty tea in the United States of America. And it all started from my grandmother's kitchen.
So she was making the product in the kitchen. Did they ever have a storefront back then, or was it just?
She actually did not have a storefront. No, she had a storefront. When she was an interior designer, she had a storefront in New York City. And then they were making Constant Comment above. And then they were selling it, putting it in the car and going to like Bloomingdale's and all these little, shops in the city and selling it door to door. Yeah. It's a pretty cool story. It's really cool to think about how they started, how little they had, Bob, little. And she was also not just selling tea. She had tapioca. She had a Chinese seasoning, anything they could get their hands on to sell, to have a business, anything. And it was really my father that said, let's stay focused on tea because there's so little money in tapioca and seasoning. And there's a little bit more money in tea. I mean, I always kid around. This is not a Rolex watch. There's not a lot in that little tea bag from a margin perspective, but it was just enough that they could make a business and make a life for themselves.
It's great. Yeah. And, so for the companies that are watching this, the Better Business Bureau companies, and it's very similar. I mean, it's pure grit. It's I think the biggest lesson is focus. You hear all this time, like when like Good to Great or any of these business books, it's like do one thing and do it really, really well. Orville Redenbacher will talk about, doing popcorn really well. So all I do is popcorn, do it really well. And for you guys, it's like, we're just going to do tea and do it really, really, really well.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's a whole series of things to be successful. One, I think what's your point of difference? Like why your tea over somebody else, or why your popcorn over somebody else? And there's many different reasons why it could be your popcorn over somebody else's popcorn. But you have to have a real reason, and you have to think about it, and you have to develop it, and you have to stay true to it. Our business was built on quality. And that's such an easy word to say, a very hard word to live. And it took me years, I've been here over 35 years, to learn what quality even means. So I think you have to know what your product is or your service, and you have to distinguish it. And then you're right, then you just creatively are constantly turning it, twisting it, and seeing what else do I need. You can't just, okay, I got a great product, I'm gonna keep moving forward. What else? What else? What else does that mean? Twist and turn in all kinds of new ways to keep it relevant and exciting and growing.
And here we are 70 years later, again, we also 75 years later, and we think about vision. Did your grandmother do you think she ever envisioned that the company would turn into what it's become today? Do you think she had a vision for being in every grocery store, or she just,
No.
What do you think her vision would have been back then?
I mean, again, interior designer. And I think, probably that was her vision, right? And then she was selling in New York. My grandfather was originally was a broker, food broker, and also in publishing, but anyway. And so I think so their idea was to try to get products that could sell in New York City and maybe around the country. She was a real, said entrepreneur, like she would read all the local papers from all around the country and find out where there were special events and then hand write notes and send them tea. It's amazing what she did. But I don't think she ever had her sights on, especially tea. I think it was really my father really was the one that said, we're going to be in the tea business. We're all in. We're not going to be doing some of the other things, which I think was, hard for her. She was in soups and all kinds of stuff she wanted to do.
Oh, yeah.
And he really focused on tea and then expanded the tea. And he had the vision to really have us be the business we are today.
So then I guess take us back to the 60s now. So he had that turning point. We're going to exit, almost like what GE would say. We're going to exit all these markets where we can't be number one or two, and we're going to go all in on tea. So he makes that decision. Well for GE, but what was that? I don't know. It's worked out too well for GE, but yeah. Not recently. It did when Jack Welch was there. Oh, wow! I know. Yeah. All right. So what were some like the early pivotal points then when your dad and your mom took over? So he makes that decision. Were there any like parts of his strategy that you think, even today, these things would be very, very applicable? Obviously knowing what market you're in, but what were some of the other big levers that maybe he pulled back then that got you to where you are today? I think two things, really. One is that you just don't know where nuggets are going to come from. And two is being very flexible. And I think they apply very much today. And he would honestly assess, as I've often assessed when I lecture, that it's not always about having this amazing strategy. It's a nugget came put together that you asked that question. I asked my team, what else does that mean? And from there, you ended up having this most amazing journey. And then along the way, pivoting, right? And so what does that mean, right? So we want to stay in tea, but we ended up being sued many moons ago. No, we actually sued many moons ago Twinings because they copied our package. And in doing this lawsuit to protect our little business from big Twinings, the lawyer said, do you have any more teas than just Constant Comment? That started him on this whole development of this plethora of teas that we have today from a lawsuit, right? And then we were in a gift business that had all these different teas from around the world, and none of them made it. Well, we decided to take the Japanese green tea, which is now Chinese green tea, but and put that into our line. We're the #1 green tea in the United States of America. So
yeah, you have a vision of you want to work hard, you want to make sure that you're bringing the right people around you, but nuggets and flexibility has always been why we're successful. And I think a lot of the reasons today why we're so successful. And that applies to every business listening.
And I'm going to imagine it's a family business, so you've been involved probably since you were a kid, right?
I can't say that. No, I've been knowing about tea since I was a little girl. I used to come home from school and everybody was in my kitchen drinking teas. And my mother would annoyingly say to me, hey, try this one. I'd be like, I don't even like tea. So yeah, no.
Can't say that now, though.
No, it wasn't like we didn't have like tea rituals or anything like that. And but in high school, I was like, I really like this family business idea. I'm going to start taking marketing classes in high school. And then in college, I was like, I'm going to major in finance and marketing. And they were like, oh, but liberal arts. And I said, that's great, but I know what I want to work in the business. And then in college, the same thing. And then after college, I worked for Just B. Seagram's, which I loved. And then I went to graduate school. I went to Kellogg, which was an amazing experience, and really continued to try to hone my skills and try to hone my leadership skills. But didn't know anything about tea. Didn't really love tea. And then got into the business, and as time has gone on, you learn a lot, you learn to love a lot, and you become very passionate about it.
So about what year did you join Bigelow?
84 part-time, 85 part-time. I worked summers part-time as well, and then full-time 86.
Yeah. And so the company, obviously, so when your dad took over, it was still very, very small, your dad and your mom. What were some of the stages of like growth? I mean, can you tell me how maybe the executive team maybe came together and the management team came together over those years?
Well, when I joined, I was within a certain period of time. I don't remember. I was put on the executive team. I wasn't any substance, but I was on the team. And my father had a great team for his era and his style and whatever. And so I came on board with an executive team. As years went on, I had to develop my own executive team, but we didn't have a board of directors. And we did, but we didn't really. And I really sort of insisted that we get a board of directors. And that wasn't something that my mother and father were comfortable with, because they didn't understand what anyone would know that knew more than them about a business that they've given everything to, which I understand. But I knew for me, I wanted some experts to review me multiple times a year, to review what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, what my executive team's doing, how we're doing it, and really challenge me. So I think one of the more important things that I really developed in my leadership time was really a board of directors, which I really value their opinion.
I think that's one of the biggest differences between good and great, is that your willingness to have people that know more than you, have more experience than you, to come in and audit what you're doing and tell you what you're doing wrong, and being willing to listen and take action on those things. Where a lot of people are, to your point, might not want that. They might not be interested in that. Hey, listen, I don't, they don't want that accountability. But bringing some coaches in, having people really looking at what you're doing, that's amazing. I'm sure that played a huge role in what you've done with the company so far.
I really try to teach my executive team as well, because they're top leaders and maybe they don't necessarily need a lot of input. My nature is very collaborative, and the reason why I'm collaborative, for a couple of reasons. One, I think it makes people feel good to be part of something. Okay. It's nice. But the other reason is because there's a nugget. I'm all about that nugget. I'm about to find that nugget. And when my executive team first joined, when when a new person retires and one person retires, a new person joins on, they're very confused by that, because we work on plans, we start to develop plans, and all of a sudden we'll hear some other stuff, and I'll say, guys, let's just listen. And they're like, oh, I'm like, the whole thing doesn't have to make sense, but there could be something in there. Let's just listen. And I'm always like, wait a minute, that isn't a shame. We develop that further. And at first that was hard for my executive team, but now they really understand. Guys, think about how much better we're going to be if we understand problems we didn't think about, but somebody else brought to our attention in advance. So they've gotten much more collaborative as a team, but even just developing that collaboration was not very easy, because people kind of think they know what they're doing. They've gotten to these positions from years of being very smart and making good decisions. I think we can always be better by listening.
Do you run your company off of a set of core values?
Oh, well, I'd like to think so. There's so much I've had to do over my 35 years to develop my message, my mission, my vision, because one of the biggest problems that I encountered when I took over leadership is I figured because it's here, you get it. You all get it because it's here. How do you not get it? Can't you see it? And I realized that I needed to do a lot better job of messaging through the organization.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've done over the last 7 or 8 years, I developed something called the Bigelow Home. It's kind of hard for you to see it right here, but it's a little loose that I've made for everybody. And the Bigelow Home was really my way that I could message throughout all 400 family members. You know, first of all, like, what is my purpose? What's our purpose? How do I tie in a guy in the warehouse with the receptionist, with a accounts payable, with a customer service, right? They're not all making tea. So, and I realized, you know, what gets me out of bed in the morning and how do I try to run this organization? So it took me about a year to develop my purpose for the company. And that was really to create an environment of pride that brings out everyone's desire and ability to make a difference every day. And that purpose is not just about a tea bag, right? It's about how do we make a difference every day in every little thing we're doing? How do I get every employee completely energized to make a difference every day? And from that is the vision. Falling from my purpose, that vision is to harness all of that pride to deliver an uncompromising quality tea experience that enriches life everyday moments. Because think about it, Bob, what's a cup of tea? It's just an everyday moment. And how do you make that everyday moment special? But what falls from there is what I call my pillars, how I, the communities which we take care of, and my principles, why I say yes and why I say no. But then on the foundation of the Bigelow Home is what I call the values, the Bigelow values. And these are not values that we all have, but I want them all to aspire to have inside the organization. So things like innovation, energetic, visionary, fun. Like, I can't tell you how many values I have on the base. And for me, the beauty of these values is that you might not be fun and I might not be fun, but boy, we have somebody else on the floor who is fun. Thank you for bringing fun to the floor, right? But it also is a voice for the 300 out of the 400 of us are working in manufacturing. How do I get their voice heard? And so when we have our reviews twice a year, we sit back and we go, you need to tell us values that we need to do better. And we just sit back and we wait. And then we tally it all together. And then by category, we say, hey, we're hearing a little bit about transparency in one of our plants. What are we going to do about that? And we really address it through the next 6 months until we do the value check again. So that's how I try to run the company, so the values run all the way through the organization.
That's incredible. So I have yet to meet a successful leader that doesn't run their organization off of a purpose, off of a vision, and off of values. So I think that's a very, very big lesson for everyone that's on here. If you don't have a very clear purpose for your organization to do this in the world, I think a lot of like charities get that really well. It's like to end hunger, to do this, whatever it is. Like, know what your purpose statement is, why you exist. If you do bring that to the forefront, you do bring that to life, what does that look like? That's your vision. How does it all come together? And take that time and document that inside your organization. And what are the values? Like, what should we do and shouldn't we do? Have that test so you're getting the right people inside your organization. One book I might recommend, and you might know this one, Cindi, is Scaling Up. Have you ever seen Scaling Up by Vern Harnish?
I've not read Scaling Up.
It's Rockefeller Habits is a pre-book to this. Again, for anyone that's on here, we just heard Cindi talk about how she runs her entire organization off that house, off of these values and principles of purpose. If you've never done that inside your organization, highly recommend this book. And then also, I love the fact that you challenge. How are we doing in our company right now? Let's go back. Like, let's look at these principles. Let's look at these values and our purpose. Where are we strong? Where are we falling short? And what are we going to do about it? Which again speaks to what a great leader you are, being willing to be challenged, not just by your advisors, but by your own employees. Because you probably have employees all over the organization, front lines, managers, whatever, the receptionist that's looking at how are we doing this company, and speak up and say, we're not really doing this one right. And it might be the most brilliant thing that anyone in the organization said that we've all overlooked, and you've created that platform for them, which again speaks to why you have such an incredible company.
But it's also two things I want to talk about. It's the journey, which I'll come back to. But the second thing is, I also don't expect, amazing ideas or suggestions. But I also know that there's something somewhere in there that's going to make me better if I really want to look hard enough. But it also, just think about for the individual, it says, hey, they listened to me. They listened to me. They really want to hear what I have to say. Excuse me. Think about how that changes your experience at work, right? And let's face it, as leaders, we influence these people's lives. And we need to take that seriously. So I'm going to go back to the first thing I just want to talk about was the journey. For everyone that is listening, it's a great journey to come up with what your mission is. And you can listen to people, which I did. I had brainstorming sessions. I had whiteboards. We did all this, blah, 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 blah. The reality, at the end of the day, is it has to be what is the reason you get out of bed in the morning. And you need to challenge yourself to figure that out. And when you do that, you've heard everything, you've listened, but then when you actually can really crystallize why you get out of bed in the morning to go into this organization, what are you trying to do? It resonates with everyone because it's not just a bunch of words. It can't just be words. Like one of the things I'm always like, it just sounds good, but that isn't really what we are. What's the essence of our DNA? So it's a great journey for everyone who's listening to really think through what is your mission, and then share that throughout the organization and let them challenge you on it. If you're saying, hey, this is your mission, but yet you did this, which seems to counter that, you better listen.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about culture, and we're starting to go into that now, but, I'm sure a lot of people watching, some people maybe, hey, listen, I got my team on lockdown. They'll run through a wall for this company, run through a wall for me. And other people are saying, like, listen, I can't get my employees to do anything, and I have turnover issues, and, I can't keep my good people. So, listening to their feedback is a big part of that. And making sure that they feel listened, they feel validated, they feel like they're part of the team, they understand that line of sight into what this organization is all about and what we're trying to accomplish. What would be some other things that you might recommend for, retaining your best talent or getting the best talent inside the organization and creating that culture?
Well, one thing I'll always say is, and we started off at the very beginning, there's not, I'm just saying this, there's not a lot of margin in a tea bag. There's nothing I can do about it. Our whole mission, right, is to create the best value for the everyday person to be able to afford this cup of tea. So we use the best ingredients from the world. We use the best overwrap in the world is foil, very, very expensive, right? So there's just not a lot of money. So I'm very clear. You're never going to work at Bigelow for money. You're just not gonna. We're not going to beat you. There's so many companies that have tons more margin. They're going to come in and they can take your people. So it can't just be for money. And from all the books you read, that's usually not the number one reason, but you can lose a lot of people with that. So you really do need to create an environment where people feel like they're part of something, and that staying here longer means more. So we have all kinds of longevity programs, et cetera, because we do have so many. Our average in this Fairfield facility is about 18 years. So that's really good. But you just have to understand that you don't want it to be about money, but that means you really got to spend time thinking about what else that you can do for the employees. What else can you do? And listening to me is free. That's a free one. Christ, some of the other programs you want to do, they're very expensive. We make sure we have really good health benefits, good bonus plans, and they're great and I'm proud of them, but listening, that's free.
That's incredible. That's great. So you took over, you became CEO and president in 2005.
Yes.
So obviously your dad did an amazing job during his tenure. What did that transition look like? How were you selected to be the heir? And what was the goals at that point?
It was actually challenging. It wasn't that smooth. I'd like to say it was.
Never is.
And it wasn't that my father's not the greatest human in the world. He is the greatest human in the world. But my sister was also in the business, and my mother, a beautiful soul that she is, was like trying to balance. Oh, it's got to be even. And to be honest, my sister was very creative, but I think running a business was not her thing. She has retired many years ago. She actually retired in 06, 1 year after I became the president and CEO. We were co-president for about a year. So there was this desire for all of the people that are listening to be fair and equal. And what I will say is trying to be fair and equal isn't necessarily fair, because what it does is it put too much pressure on my sister to be in a race that she shouldn't be in the race. She didn't have the best of health. She has since passed this February, not from COVID, but she passed. So I think it's better to be honest early on with your members that are potentially in a position to run an organization. I do think desire and skill do need to align. I do think the right kind of desire, nothing to do with my sister or myself in this case. I have been with many family businesses and many different organizations, and sometimes you have to be able to figure it out. If you have someone in an organization that just wants the title, the name, that's the same thing, the title, the car, the office. I mean, I will be honest, Bob, I sat in some of these family business things and I listened to my generation back then and I was like, what? Like, that's not why you run a business. So I think you have to take an honest inventory when you're looking to pass a business down. And that's not always easy, and the person might not be there that you need. So there's all these issues there. But in general, I think it's better to be more honest. We tried to be this equal thing. It was a little challenging. And we got through that because my sister really wasn't well enough to be able to do this. So it's not the right reasons that to me. And after I got the baton, my father couldn't help himself. He got all engaged if he didn't like something I was doing, and he would come in, and here I'd work with my team on the strategy where we want to go, and come in and say, hey, I don't like that. I'd be like, wait, what? You can't really do that. So we did have to have what I call a come to Jesus meeting out of respect. I love that man. I always will. Apple of my eye. And I said, look, Dad, you got to make a decision now. It's either you or it's me. Either you handed me the baton and I'm going to make mistakes, or you didn't. And I love you, but I mean it. And he said, I got it. It's your baton. I'm done. And I said, I have to trust you now. He said, I will never do it. And he never did it again. He never kind of came back in. He would tell me, which I want, Cindi, I don't agree with that, blah, blah, blah. And I'd say, I love you. I hear you. This is the direction we're going to go, and here's why. And nothing hurt me more as a daughter to not listen to my father and have to do what I think was best for the business. Nothing, because I loved him. I love him. But he had to understand, and he was beautiful about it. Beautiful. But it was not easy. And it was boiled down to, which is a funny term for a tea business, it boiled down to really direct communication, passionate communication. Look through their eye and understand where they're coming from, but also share where you are. And then you have to kind of mean business. And I really meant business.
That's incredible. So yeah. As you're saying that, it's reminding me, there's another book, and you probably think I'm just like a huge book nerd, but a book, Radical Candor. Have you ever heard of Radical Candor?
I have not read. We're going to have to find the books that I have read of yours, but no, I'm not.
So Radical Candor, it's being candid, like you were, being very, very direct, not waiting to have conversations. When you have to have the conversation, but the radical part is caring deeply at the same time. Like, you love your father, he loves you. You didn't ruin that relationship, but you weren't afraid to have the right conversation when you have to have it. And again, the BBB, there's family businesses all over in this organization who are probably having the same issues. And I think there's a huge lesson what you just shared there is you got to have conversations. You have to have very clear conversations.
I think, and I didn't read your book, but one of the things that I've always found very important for me is I try to start looking through their eyes first. And to be honest, we can't be upset. My parents looked at me as the Grim Reaper. I was like, if I ran the business, they would have nothing to do and die. And you can't argue. That's how they felt. That's how they felt.
Yeah.
That's okay. I needed to understand that doesn't make me a bad person. I'm not a bad person. I love them more than anything. I still to this day, I'm their #1 fan. I take great care of them. We're very, very close. But that's how they felt. So it's really important to try to at least understand that. And in this conversation, share that with them. It's very hard. Emotion is a very difficult thing to get beyond, right? I mean, this whole COVID thing, you're dealing with employees that have these emotions that you're like, wait, what? There's fact and then there's emotion, but you can't ignore the emotion. Mm-hmm. So that's, I think, is very helpful, is that understanding, not justifying it, but understanding it, and then acknowledging it, and then talking about the reality in your perspective. And that really helped.
That's great. Empathy. Now, female CEO, which is incredible. And you're a real inspiration for, I'm sure, a lot of women who are, very career driven. You've obviously had a balance. You've got 2 kids, if I got that right.
Yes.
So, what advice would you have for female executives, female entrepreneurs, or just female professionals that aspire to be where you are today? And then I'll ask you a follow-up there. What advice would you have for me, who wants to be able to help groom more female leaders as well?
Well, one of the things I think was a benefit for me was that I had some flexibility in my schedule initially, which was very, very helpful, that I would recommend for all businesses, which in today's COVID, we've had flexibility slammed onto us. So that is expediting the flexibility that I think women and men need to help raise a family and stay engaged in business. And I think that what I'm seeing today is what I did back then. I could work all kinds of hours, but I could work here, then I could go home and be at home for a certain amount, then I could start up again on a computer. That's kind of today's world. So I think that we are in a better position today to give that flexibility to women and men. But the other issue I would say is, I think a wonderful skill set that, not that men don't have it when I say a woman has a skill set, we're very organized and we're very good at scheduling. That was a saving grace for me because, the old, it's on my phone. And so, which by the way, here's a picture of my 2 children. Hold on, where are they? There they are. Is like if I wanted to read in the classroom on Wednesday, or I want to do art in the classroom on Wednesday, or I had art in the classroom. And I've given that to all our employees. If they want to, male, female, if they want to be Wednesdays for the next 6 months for an hour and a half in a classroom, you're going to make up the time. You're going to work later. You're going to start earlier. And it's that kind of flexibility and scheduling that I think really allow a family to be able to still be a family. Because, my hours were never going to be normal. But yet I was always home for dinner with my kids. Like, they always knew that. My son used to call me starving to death in high school. I'm starving. Come on, Mom. I'm like, if you eat dinner before I get home, I'll kill you. And he'd be like, okay, I want to eat dinner. And I'd fly home and we'd have dinner together, right? And I would be all in. We are very good women at compartmentalizing, right? Again, that doesn't say men or not. Compartmentalized. There was no business. It was all about my kids and their homework and whatever. Then they would start doing their homework in high school and my daughter, and then back on the phone and work I did. So that's so important. Flexibility and scheduling is to me was what I did, and it's the key today. And I see it in so much more spaces than it was before. Nothing breaks my heart. I have women friends to this day that are in successful positions that have said to me point blank, if I ever even said I had children, I would have never gotten ahead. I'm like, what? So we have to understand there is a real in certain businesses for that. But I do think that the world is different. COVID has expedited flexibility, which I think is critical for families and for women who want to have both.
That's great. So yeah, certainly. I mean, COVID is certainly awful, but there has been some things that have really advanced us as a society. And I think you're right in the flexibility. It's forced us as we're home to manage our own our own schedules and flexibility, and work when we have to work, and be a parent or family member when we have to be that. So I think that's the biggest takeaway here for any professionals with families, to get really good at managing your schedule, and then for businesses to whatever you can do to help provide that flexibility, and it's going to benefit everybody. So that's great. Speaking of COVID, you had it.
I did. Such a good leader to prevent COVID coming in the company. I get it. We obviously COVID hit in February, March. Unbelievable. I think we did a really good job of keeping the 3 plants open and no COVID really getting in there. If they did come in, nobody got it. They counted from the outside. Very proud of all of that. and really good inside the corporate. We brought everybody back in full time in the office in July. It was great. And then I went out to dinner on a Friday night inside. I normally was eating outside, and I'm not blaming the restaurant. They didn't do anything wrong. I went inside, 50% full. Waiters had their masks on. I had my mask off. I felt very uncomfortable trying to eat inside. I ate inside, and 48 hours later, I had COVID. Again, you know, it can happen anywhere, but lesson learned for me, I let my guard down like many of us are doing. Because it's hard to live life like this for this long, right? But I have to stay diligent. Well, the reality of it was, I had to, you know, tell everybody here I had COVID. I didn't even know I had COVID when I came into the office. I had a quarantine. I had to have everyone that was exposed to me quarantine. You know, the good news is, thank God, nobody in the company got COVID from me. My parents in their 90s, as I explained to you, did not get COVID from me. They were with me a lot, especially when I was contagious. Oh my God. So it's a blessing. Yeah. But I did well. I mean, it was not that I'm lowering anybody's guard. I sick for a few days. I laid really low. I stayed behind closed doors. I did everything I needed to do. You know, my partner brought me my food up at the entranceway. I got my food, and then Trey went back out later. You know, I did everything I needed to. I got 100% better. I feel fantastic. Great story came out in the New York Times today about how long I should be able to remain safe from this disease again, which is good. But lesson learned for my team was that, you know, I've been reading about it. You can be asymptomatic. I'm all over it. I did not realize, and that's foolish of me, as my son let it, you know, that yesterday, is that it could be a basic little cold. It could just be a little cold. I should have known that, but I didn't. And so that's the lesson, is that we want to protect everybody. We love everybody. I'm very blessed that nobody was injured here, and my family was not injured due to my lowering my guard. But it was very humbling for me, because this is what I do. I have 400 people that I protect. I have my parents that I protect, and I got COVID and came into the business with it. So hard lesson, very humiliating lesson, very humiliating.
I am so glad you're feeling better. I'm so glad that you didn't spread it to anybody, and your family's all good. And now you're stronger for it. You got the antibody, which.
Yeah, I know. And the whole New York Times thing is between the antibody, the T cells, the B cells, your body is ready to rock for a while. I'm like, yes. Lesson learned, be careful.
So you talked a little bit about how you were preventing the spread of COVID inside your work. I guess around that time, or before that time, did you do work from home? Did you do anything else that now everyone had to come in, huh?
We were all working in the office. We've had a very, very, very successful no transfers inside the organization. We have, I mean, you know, schools open, the numbers have skyrocketed in Connecticut now. I mean, the hospitals are really in trouble here. So we've had a few cases where people brought it in, but nobody shared the virus inside. It did not go from one person to another. We've done a lot of things. We have a filtration system. It's called a MERV 13. That's a very high level. 8 minutes, all these rooms are recycled with air from the outside and completely filtered. No one's allowed 6 feet within each other for more than 15 minutes. You have to have a mask on at all times, unless, like, for example, I'm in my office right now. No more than 2 in a bathroom, 2 in a locker room. We have dividers everywhere. We went through great lengths. I got COVID. We went through great lengths to protect the employees.
But you didn't get it at work, so.
Nope, and they didn't get it from me, which is a miracle. I mean, it really does speak to the filtration, the masks, and the separation. So big fan of all that.
Are there changes that you made this year because of COVID, or just whatever? It's 2020. It's been a crazy year. Have there been changes in the business that you made this year? You're like, this is here to stay. Like, we're not going back.
That's a great question. I call that COVID positive, because we've got to find some COVID positives. Yeah. How are we COVID positive? And during March, when the business was just, I can't even begin to tell you the stresses here. the executive team over the next 90 days really wrote down what I call COVID lessons learned. How are we going to be a better organization? How am I going to be a better leader? How are we each going to be better? And I am telling you, Bob, we have a 6-page document on how we're going to be better moving forward, because it uncovered so many areas where we were not efficient, and where one person had all the information and nobody else could get access to it, or where you had one supplier and if there was a problem there, you had nowhere else to turn. We uncovered 6 pages. And so I'd like to say we really have tried to glean as much positive from COVID as possible. Of course, what makes me laugh is when we all had to bring our lists of COVID lessons learned. First one on my list is, if you think you have the answers to COVID, you don't. And what's so funny is 9 months later, if you thought you had the answers to COVID, you don't. You got COVID. So I can happily say the lessons I learned, they're still the lessons I'm learning. The next one I had was humility. It's just that, this is a humbling virus. Literally during the difficult times, and I'm sure the individuals that are listening, I thought I gleaned everything I could. I listen, I read, I talk, and I'd say, okay, right at this moment, this is what we need to be doing. 4 hours later, it wasn't good enough anymore. I'm like, okay, here's our new thing. Here's how we're going to move forward. The next day, that didn't mean anything anymore. I had the hardest time keeping up with the incoming, and very much part of that was the emotions of the employees. I had never had to deal with this emotional rainbow. And, part of me was like, I didn't think you should be over here, and I didn't think you should be over here. I'm a centrist in everything of my life. But yet I had to hear both sides, and I had to try to glean this person this way and this person that way. But I was dealing with, there were times I had to just close my door and just cover my head and go, God, wait, what? What is this employee worried about? But then when I open the door again, I have to be ready to deal with that. But there were many closed door moments where I was like, what?
I think that was the hardest thing for me this year. You can go to business school, you can read business books, you learn about business, management, accounting, finance, marketing, but 80% of my time this year was dealing with obviously the social issues going on in the world this year and how that affected my team, and obviously with COVID and just the added stress and worry on my team. And you don't learn about how to lead an organization through times like this. I mean, there's 3 crises going on in the world at once right now, which is insane. And I'm sure I can tell by your reactions right now that's probably been the hardest part of your year too.
Yeah, people can't understand. Well, people listening can understand the pressures coming in from every which angle, and you're still trying to run a business. You're trying to run a business. You're trying to drive it forward. You're trying to think future, and you are dealing with so many hysterical moments at the time. Yeah. So, and then on top of it, the CEO gets COVID. So let's just talk about that variable, what that did to the psyche of the employees. 400 of them. So yeah, it was what I think in a leadership position, I don't really know how to describe it well, but you have to be able to let this go through you like a sieve, but you have to know which data points to hold on to as it's going through you. You can't hold on to all of them. It has to run through you, but you have to be able to say, that one I want, this one I not, that one I not, and this one I'm going to index back here and I'm going to pull it out over later. It's almost like you are a computer that's just dealing with so much incoming, and you just got to know what to do with it and where to put it and when to pivot. It's I can't describe it.
You mentioned communication, and I have to tell you, as a leader, there's been nothing more important that helped get this team, or at least our team, I'm sure it probably happened with your team too, get them through 2020, than just constant communication inside the organization, especially in March and April. Lots of videos from me when the George Floyd thing happened, lots of videos, lots of conversations inside the company. Obviously when school started back up, again, just lots of conversations, because I have people working from home, and they can't get childcare. They got their kids 6-year-old kid trying to take class on Zoom, and they got to be a parent while trying to get their job done. And it's just been a really, really funky year. But communication for us has been probably the biggest thing I can say that helped the most.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And even in your communications, it can be processed so differently by employees, right? So I had an employee, all-employee meeting, and I love our employees, and I have such great respect for them. And I also recognize our heroes are the 300 in the manufacturing plants that had to come to work every day, right? Got 100 in the office that can go home, but I got 300 that can't go home. So that's a different world you're balancing, right? Plus my corporate and my plant here are one. So I can't just say, you guys go and you guys stay. And, there's all kinds of stuff. But I think, we talked about the values of who we are as a family, inclusive, supportive, it's just who we are. It's in our DNA. This plant here is a microcosm of the world, right? It's a beautiful thing. And yet when I had an all-employee meeting and I was thanking them and I had an extra bonus, I gave $1 million back to mostly the whole plant. Corporate got some, but the majority of it went to the plant in an extra bonus on top of the regular bonus saying, thank you. But I also said, I just want to also make a statement that I believe that Black Lives Matter. I just want to say that so that you hear that. And that was incredibly offensive to some, incredibly offensive. And I tried to say, guys, just because I say Black Lives Matter doesn't mean I don't think all lives matter. It doesn't mean I don't think police lives matter. We've gotten to a place, Bob, where it's either you're this or you're that. I can't say Black Lives Matter, and that means I don't care about good police doing good work and the need for police. I just had to deal with things that I don't you know who I am as a person? Don't you know how caring I am for everyone? I'm not going to pick a side on, well, if these people matter, then these people don't matter. But bad people matter no matter where they are. I don't care if you're a bad CEO or you're bad in a religious setting. If you're bad, you got to be called out. You're doing bad things. That doesn't mean I don't think all CEOs are not bad, but there's some bad CEOs. You got to call them out. And if I call a bad CEO and I say all CEOs are bad, they're not all bad. I'd like to think I'm not a bad person. So it's been very interesting to deal with the social issues. Try to stay true to who you are, but people are looking so through their lens that they hear what they think, what they process. And, I've had to have a lot of single conversations based on that and say, let's talk this through why what I said was so offensive to you. It's been it's been a fascinating journey for me. Fascinating. Yeah. And that's what I said before. I think who I am, you know who I am, right? You don't know who I am. You don't know how I think, right? I said at the beginning. So this was to help you understand who I am, but I didn't do this because of the social unrest. I did so that we're all as one company with a foundation and with a roof and with walls to be safe. Interesting.
And you talk about inclusiveness, and in our organization, you may have had this too. We had just had a very divisive election that was, very bitter. Inside my organization, we've got some people that are extremely liberal, and we got people that are extremely conservative. And I really, like you said, I'm kind of like in the middle. I kind of make my own opinions.
Right.
I don't identify with either party. But that was really challenging inside of our company, even the election. And it's like somebody would make a comment being like, oh, we don't like Trump, or we hate Trump. And it would really upset some other people in my company. Did you have to deal with any of that this year?
Oh, a lot of that. I had a lot of that.
How'd you handle it?
I had a lot of that. Well, again, I have a very diverse manufacturing arena in community in Connecticut, which I love, and I'm so proud of everyone, and we're very close. Yeah. But we did have individuals that were sitting in the cafeteria and were espousing initially back in 17-18, espousing some of the comments that were being said from the administration that were very much upsetting my community of color. And I had to make it very clear. I called a town hall and I said, guys, listen, we've all worked together for so long, and we I think, have great respect for each other. I can't let come into these four walls anything short of respect. Yeah. And so we have to understand that this is not one race and one world and one type, and that's what makes us great. And you have to, when you come through these walls, you can't be portraying yourself as if someone is better than another, because that doesn't work in this company. It does not work in this company. And I had to look at some of my employees who I love dearly and have been here a long time, who was sort of espousing one was better than another. And I just looked at them and said, I know you've been here 30 years, but I will let you go. I will let you go if you make other people feel inferior. Yeah. It's been a real challenge. It's been a real challenge. And I get it, because I've been with all of them for a long time. I've loved them all. I've supported them. They support me. We're one family, you know, and you can't all of a sudden go after your sisters and brothers here. That don't work.
Exactly right. We you know, that was the hardest part. We cannot let this company get divided. You know, we have 70 employees, so you know you got a lot of people on both sides. So yeah, loud and clear on that one. We ended up putting a social code in place that I think really worked. It was one, be yourself, because we want to be an inclusive environment. We don't want anyone feeling like you can't just be yourself at work. 2, respect your teammates, which holds a lot of weight. 3, assume positive intent first. So whenever anyone says anything, let people make mistakes. Let them say things, you know, like let them say, if they believe in Black Lives Matter, let them say, assume positive intent first. But if something feels off to you, like you don't like the way somebody said something, have a conversation. You know, if we can apply those 4 principles inside of our company, then it did wonders. I mean, people loved it, and it really set the guidelines that this is how we behave here at Impact socially with our teammates. So
I just
that was the first thing to do for us.
Keep people understanding that, as I said to you, just because you say one thing doesn't mean you don't believe in the other thing, right?
That's right.
Just because I believe in the environment doesn't mean I don't believe in fiscal responsibility, right? Yeah. It doesn't mean. So somehow we have been forced to sides of the room, and no one is going to put me in a corner, because I am not in a corner. I can talk about all sides of any conversation and try to say, isn't there something in the middle that we can agree on? And it's when we don't listen, and all of a sudden you have a Blue Lives Matter means you're not supporting Black Lives Matter. I'm like, when did this happen? This doesn't mean that. Where are your blue lives? Where are your Black lives? I believe they all matter. Oh, what's a world without police? So, you know, it's been very interesting, and I feel very bad that people have been driven to a place where they think it's one or the other. It isn't one or the other. There's a huge portion of us in the middle.
Right.
Huge.
Cindi, I really appreciate you being so transparent. This has been a really fun conversation today, and I'm learning a ton. I know everyone else is learning a ton. We've got about 15 minutes left, so I want to remind everyone that's watching, we're going to start taking some questions. So go ahead and send the questions, and we'll read them, and we'll get through as many as I can. While you're doing that, Cindi, you do a lot for the community. You do a lot around sustainability. I know these things are incredibly important to you. Maybe you could take a few minutes to talk about some of your efforts there, and then we will, actually, a question just came in. What charities does Bigelow give to, and why? And what does it mean to be a B Corp? So let's talk about some of your community efforts as well, sustainability efforts.
First of all, we talked earlier about not everything is strategic, right? You just sort of have something in your life that you end up doing, and it ends up taking you down this amazing pathway. And I always talk about the Bigelow Tea Community Challenge, and how that started was so simple. The individual across the way from me when we were in the Norwalk facility, I was the cost accountant, he was the buyer. His name was Don Shalevitz, and his son was killed, Dave Shalevitz, in a car accident in high school, Norwalk High School. And he was so distraught. I don't even think he really even liked me, he never even talked to me. But I was mortified for this beautiful human across the way from me whose son died. And I said, what can we do? Is there anything I could do? I didn't know how to talk to him about it, and I just could feel the pain, but I didn't know what to do. So I said, let's do a Bigelow Tea little road race and raise some money in his son's name and give it to high school. This was our first Bigelow Tea Community Challenge. Today we raised $160,000. We've raised over $2 million given back to the community. We have 25 different charities. What are the charities we focus on? Mostly families, women, and children, local. smaller budgets where our $5,000 to $10,000 check is going to really have impact. Plus, I want to know the directors. I want to know the board. I want to know the citizens that they're helping. I want to understand and see them in action. So again, local is good for me because I can visit that. And so that's who we support now. I'm very, very, very proud of it. It started so simply to help my neighbor, Don Sholevitz, the buyer at the time. And it's something that the company is so proud of. So you asked about also being a B Corp. To me, a B Corp was just an extension of who we are, right? We had the Bigelow Tea Community Challenge, we had the Bigelow Home, and I started reading about the B Corp 6 years ago, and I said, oh, I like this. This is right, I like this. I like to learn. I like roadmaps. Oh, this can make me better. Oh, this can make us better. Let's follow this pathway forward and see what this is to be a B Corp. We don't have to become a B Corp, but let's see what it takes to be a B Corp. Well, of course, once we started, we're like, oh, we want to be a B Corp. But it really, I think it just really talks about the DNA and who we are. We love to give back. We love the environment. We love the employees, right? They're my family. So yeah, being a B Corp is an extension of who we are, which we love to give back to the community because we can and we should.
That's great. And you also do a lot with students as well, I saw. So what are some of your efforts with the schools that you work with?
I love to talk to young people and to really reinforce the opportunity for them. It doesn't matter what you do. It really doesn't to me, but it matters how you do it. And I'm not saying everyone's going to be the most passionate at what they do. I mean, I think we use the word passion way too early. I mean, I didn't have that till way later in life, but that's another story. But I just think it's just do your best and give it your all. Giving your all doesn't mean passion. It just means giving your all. And understanding, having pride in what you do. Like, so for example, I have some guys that, I'm very blessed. They come and they pick up the refuse at my house once a week. They have the most positive, smiling, beautiful, they make the earth so good. I once chased them down in their truck with my car. When they pulled over, I pulled over and I said, I want to thank you. You smile through the streets of Fairfield. You have this most beautiful aura, and thank you for taking away my refuse. Thank you. So it doesn't matter what you do, you make the world a better place. And so that's really what I try to talk to young people about. It doesn't matter. It's all good what you do. Just give it your all and feel really good about it. Quick little stories in the airport a while ago. The guy was an information guy, just standing around giving information. He was, legal, not just some random human. Beaming, wanted to talk to me. I ran over to him, I want to ask him some questions. And he was so enthusiastic. And I was like, oh my God, thank you. Thanks for just sharing information in such a positive way. What a beautiful space you're creating in this airport. So we all have such gifts that are free: smiling, kindness, engagement, commitment, looking you in the eye. So that's what I try to talk to young people about and make them realize it's not just about always, being able to save the world. I think it's great, but we're not all going to save the world. And I think all of us are capable of great stuff.
It's incredible. We had a question that came in earlier from Tom Z. And he was asking about patents. So your company must have a patent on, flavors. I'm sure, patent on this flavor. So can you talk about your patents and what suggestions you have?
No, I don't have patents. I have, our names are registered, right? So all of our names are registered. You can't use constant comment. You can't use our colors. So, all of this is registered. So that's why you see constant comment with an R. So this whole look is registered. The name is registered. So that's what we do. We do not have patents per se. So that one I can't address, but I can tell you from a registered, we're very careful on those. We track them every year. We track them around the globe because we don't want anyone starting to create something like this. So that's registered for Bigelow Tea is very important.
We're the same way. We our logo, our virtual events, and the names of the events and things like that. We registered, but yeah, we don't have any patents either. But yeah, actually, I'm pretty surprised. Even like the formula and the tea is not something that you can patent.
No.
Interesting.
But you know what? Here's our secret. Our formulas are so expensive, nobody's going to make them.
Really?
You'd be crazy to make them. I mean, these are the real deal, what's in here. I mean, these are the real spices and fruits from around the globe, carefully selected, very clean. No one's going to do that. That's our protection. is that our cost of goods is so expensive.
You know, it's also funny too. I'll share a quick story with you. My first job after college, I was working for a manufacturing company. I was there for 3 years doing marketing for them. And I worked with the owner's wife, and she liked tea. So for her birthday, I didn't have a lot of money, but for her birthday, I bought her pretty much every flavor of Bigelow tea that you guys had, and that was her birthday gift I gave to her with a mug. So that was also one of my first experiences with Bigelow.
Oh my God, that's the sweetest story ever. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I love you. Thank you. That's really, that means a lot to me. Next time we'll have to get one of the ones you and I are drinking, right?
Yeah, this is a great mug. It's great, and I'm really enjoying the tea. I'm almost done.
I love that. I'm enjoying Constant Comment too.
That's great.
Also, tell your audience any question is good. Whoever, you guys, don't ever worry about me. As you can tell, I'm pretty transparent. Any question you want to ask is always welcome, and I'm here. Anything I can to help any other business get over hurdle or recognize that their problem isn't the only one that has that problem, or whatever it is, I'm here for you.
Well, I have another question I was thinking of too is, you know, I mentioned a few books that have been really important to me and things that we put into practice at our business. Are you a reader? Do you have books that really stand out to you? Like, hey, listen, this book changed the way I am as a leader and things that I've done at Bigelow?
I read books that are, like, for example, I just read Samantha Power book on education of an idealist. So, and that was more just her experiences around the globe on head of the, oh my God, Nikki Haley's position.
Okay.
Right. So, you know, yeah. So I read more books along those lines.
Yeah.
I have read, obviously, a fair number of books from a business perspective. One that I read many years ago, it really impacted me, but again, it's an old book. It's called Soar with Your Strengths. And it really helped reinforce. For me, business books help reinforce, or they just help reinforce. Hopefully what you think you know is instinctively good things to do. And the Soar with Your Strengths really taught me that, you know, everyone's got strengths, everyone's got weaknesses. You really need to develop those strengths of those people. And you can't always fix the weaknesses per se. So you need to try to build teams around that. So you want them to soar with their strengths and build teams around it. That doesn't mean that you're allowing particular weaknesses that they go unchecked. That's not true. But I also think when you soar with the strengths, when you're working with someone, you can talk to them about all the good things they're doing, the strengths, and then you say, here's some of the things we need to really work on. I think they're much more open to listening to those weaknesses, and they are also recognizing that you also see what they're also bringing to the table. So that one was very impactful for me.
And strengths are, you know, it doesn't even necessarily mean it's the thing that you're best at. It's what gives somebody energy. It's what gets somebody excited about doing it. It's that thing that, like, I love doing this so much, and that's what your strengths really ultimately are. Strength Finders is another great tool, great book, where people can help discover, okay, these are your strengths. And we did this with our entire company, and everyone was like, yes, this is spot on. And it also helped us realize, okay, who should be in what roles, because there's very clear consistencies when you do something like that of what roles people should be in. So yeah, leading to strengths, and yeah, it's like forget the weaknesses too at that point too.
I love weaknesses. Like, in terms, I think that's my job, is to identify when I'm interviewing someone to be hired. I'm always looking for the weaknesses. I'm not looking for the strengths, because they wouldn't have gotten into the interview if they didn't have strengths. But I'm trying to figure out what the weaknesses are, and can I work with those weaknesses? Can I work around those weaknesses? Can I develop them? Can I ensure that they're not going to be something that's going to be too substantial? So I want to know your weaknesses. That's like my key. And so when I'm interviewing you, a little secret, I'm lowering your guard. Like, you start to become yourself, you're starting to relax, because that's what I want. Because I'm trying to find out, gee, where is Bob not good, and can I work with that? And it's been a successful formula for me, because I brought team members in and I said, okay, you know, they're all saying they can do this, they can do this, they can do that. I'm like, yeah. Here's what they can't do. Here's where we're going to have an issue. Here's what we need. Now, what do you guys think about that? Can we work with this? And then we have good conversation around that. And not that I'm brilliant, because I'm not, but I can tell you that I've had a successful formula in identifying those weaknesses. And when they came in, those were the weaknesses that showed up. And I could talk to the team and say, these are the things we've talked about. We need to stay focused on them. So I always am looking for those and working with them, but I'm doing it in a way that they're not getting in the way of your strengths.
Do you interview everybody?
No. I interview certain level leadership up.
Yeah.
Obviously, my own executive team, I clearly do that. And any what we call management council, that's our senior members. Not always, but for some of those positions, I'll interview as well. And I tend to interview if we've had a really hard time filling a good position, so we're rotating through people, then I might step in. But I don't do a significant amount of interviewing at the management council level.
Yeah, very cool. So we got a couple minutes left. Did I miss anything? Is there anything that you really wanted to share today that we didn't ask?
No, I just want to thank you for the interview and for allowing me to share my story and to hopefully show that it's not a straight line, and that we're all just trying to do the best we can. And that's really would be my mission to share today, is that there's no one right style, but there is the need to always challenge yourself to be better. There is a need to make sure you're doing the proper self-reflection, especially as you get into higher level positions, because you don't really have a lot of people, right? That's why I put the board together. I don't have a lot of people to necessarily challenge me the way that I should be challenged. So you have to do that heavy lifting. And it's easy not to, right? Because you got the title, you don't have a boss, blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because the more, I'll give you finish up with a little story. I think we have a few minutes. So years ago, when I first took over as a CEO, we did a survey. The company had done very, very well. I was raised up in the company. I figured I had the skill sets I needed. So I did the survey. And we did them every couple of years. It wasn't like, let's do a survey now. And in the survey, I read all the 400 people's, no names, what was said. And it was pretty normal stuff. I could tell when this person didn't get along with that person. You could kind of tell who they were, which is good, very cool. And then it got to the third floor, which is where I work, the sales and marketing team. And there were about 6 people that, slaughtered me. Slaughtered. And I was so mad. They used the same words. They even had the same misspells. You knew this was like a whole whatever. And I was so mad. I had a hard time functioning. I think about the hours I put in. We got all the excuses. The hours I put in, and nobody cares more. Oh. Finally, I had to stop the whining internally. And I had to say, okay, all right, this is your job. This is what you're supposed to be doing. Stop it. So I started to have people come in my office. They were so scared. And I had them come in to talk to me about what they saw and how could they help me. And my first guy that had come in, I love, we're very close. He says, if you are having me come in here because you want me to defend you out there on that floor, I'm not going to do that. I was like, well, that's a good beginning. And, that wasn't why I was going to do this. The next thing he said to me was, don't you know that's how they felt? And I said, no, if I thought that's how they felt, I would not be so surprised. So when he left, I was like, holy shamoly. So I continued to interview. And I put together sort of a 6-prong attack for me, not attack on them, game plan, I should say, on what I needed to do differently. And I pulled my executive team together and I discussed what we needed to do. Part of it was something simple like, guys, when we make decisions as a team, I have 1 or 2 of you that leave and say, Cindi says this is where we're going to go. I said, that's a disservice to me. It's a disservice to you. I said, we are doing things as a team in here. And you're using my name as a weight so that they can't argue. But that's making me look bad. It's making you look bad. I'm going to ask you to please never use my name in that setting again. And to understand why. Because you deserve the credit of the decisions we made. And also, you're making it sound like I'm making these decisions in here and you're witnessing for hours. That's not how we're doing it. So then I also realized I had to circle back more. So if I was in a tough situation and I came in cross hard and I was tough on them, I had to circle back. I'm sorry. Did you understand why? Let's walk you through. How are you feeling? I'm capable of doing that. I can do that stuff. So I did my 6-point game plan, reversed. I'd like to think I reversed everything. I've learned a lot. I grew a lot. But the best thing that came out of it, Bob, was my executive team said, if you can learn to be better like that, so can we. So I role modeled about having to recast, relearn who you are as a person. I had to do that for me. But one of the greatest lessons was my team said the same thing. If you can change and you can learn, we can change and we can learn. So that is my message for all of you listening, is that it sometimes hurts. And sometimes you might think they have it all wrong, but there's a nugget in there. There's something you can do better. And it's our job in this leadership role to be the best we can be every day.
Cindi, you are absolutely an inspiration. I've enjoyed every second of this interview with you today. This has been so much fun. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. Thank you on behalf of the Better Business Bureau. Thank you on behalf of the attendees for being so open, so transparent, sharing everything you shared today. You are so cool, and I hope I have a chance to connect you again.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you again. I do appreciate that. That's so kind of you to spend this time with me. So I hope you did enjoy it. It sounds like you did. Woo!
Very
I don't
much
have
so.
COVID anymore. Woo! And for everybody else, have a super duper day.
Thanks, Cindi. Talk to you soon.
Bye, guys. Have a super day.